Welcome to Clyde Samvada, brought to you by the Hindu Temple of Scotland. Namaste to all. You would have seen that we are now in a natural setting for today's episode, and we are just trying to match the content of the episode with the background by doing this change of location. What we want to talk about today is the link between climate and Hinduism. And the reason why we are timing it now is Dr. Srihari has just recently signed a declaration on behalf of faith leaders along with civil society organizations and scientists to renew the commitment of the entire society in a sense towards the climate as a part of renewing the commitments from the COP26 Glasgow declaration. So maybe you can start by telling us a bit more about how this declaration came about, what we are trying to reaffirm through that.
Namaste, Srivas. Thank you very much for talking about the environment and the climate. That's what we're talking about today. So COP26 happened in Glasgow. We all know that. And as a part of the COP26, the scientists and the government organizations, the leaders of various nations were in Glasgow to discuss the environment, to discuss the climate, and to agree on the principles that would help us protect the environment. And the faith community was seen as a very key role to play, mainly because the faith community had access to reach out to various people who follow the faith. Yeah. So people from various faiths, the faith leaders, got together and came up with a declaration, which is now called the Glasgow Declaration. And all the faith communities became signatories to the document. And from the Hindu community, it was Acharyaji, Medinipatiji from Glasgow Hindu Mandir, and myself from Hindu Temple of Scotland. We were the signatories to that. And by being a signatory, what it meant was we would then work with our own communities, within the community in which we work, to try and raise awareness of the environment and the climate crisis, and what we can do at individual level, at the organization level, say for example within the temples and the mandir, and then to lobby at a more higher level along with the government to have practices in place. So that is called the Glasgow Declaration. And following on the Glasgow Declaration, what we have seen recently in the past few months is the governments have started going back on the commitments which they said they would try and achieve. And the targets that we set for ourselves, they are getting postponed. And when we are postponing the targets, then it does not sound right, because what we're trying to do is have measures in place to limit the damage, but we're saying that we're not going to have those measures in place, so the damage is getting worse. And in effect, what's happened is the climate crisis is now emergency. Yeah. That is what it is. Yeah. And realizing that, 4 days ago, led by the Church of Scotland, various leaders came together, and on this occasion it was not just the faith community but people from the scientific community, the scientists, and from the civil bodies. Everyone came together and again reaffirmed the pressing need to act on the current climate crisis and to push the governments, both at local level, at national level, at international level, to bring that climate crisis onto the agenda in every decision making that they take about the economy, about the world matters. So the document was published earlier this week, and I happen to be again a signatory to that. And as a part of that, I was again asked to say things and what my views were. And thank you for agreeing that this is a very important pressing issue. Yeah. and then leading to the conversation that we are having. I'm not sure if your audience know that when COP26 was happening, we ran a series of promotion events highlighting the role of environmental protection, and your host Sreevas here was one of the guest speakers that talked about how the climate crisis affects beyond the government in the Beyond Climate series. And he talked about how it affects beyond the economy. So it's lovely to have this conversation with you, Sreevas.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I think when it comes to net zero, Scotland is probably having one of those hardest ambitions when it comes to meeting these goals in the next 5 years and stuff. So we are in a place where there is the advocacy as well as the intention to meet those goals. So it's timely that we are having this conversation and renewing the commitment that we have towards the climate. And just reflecting on the climate from an individual standpoint, when I think about the climate and the environment, I think it, for us in the Hindu faith, it almost naturally comes in our daily practice itself. So for example, when I wake up, one of the first prayers that I say before stepping foot on the ground is a sloka that is trying to thank and seek permission from Bhumata Devi to set foot, which goes by Samudra Vasane Devi, Parvata Sthana Mandale, Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam, Padasparsham Shamaswame. So you almost try taking a ask for forgiveness to set foot on the ground before you step foot for the first time on the ground. So for me, like, that is my everyday renewed commitment towards the environment as the first act of the day in some way. And then in our households and even the temple, one of the things that we do is do like a rangoli, which is made out of rice powder. And this again we do every day in the morning itself. So soon after you're waking up, one of the initial acts is putting this rangoli every day in the morning outside the house or outside the temple. And the significance to that is that because it's made out of rice powder, it's essentially food for your ants or birds. So you're kind of having an act right in the first acts of the day, offering food for the animals and the birds in that sense. So that is there. And
not to mention, you're using only natural materials.
Yeah.
And you're not using anything unnatural or processed in trying
it's rice powder. Yeah, it's again coming from the environment, going back to the environment. So there is the natural loop of that. And then when we take bath again, we invoke the waters of the holy rivers in the water, and then we are taking bath. So Gange Chemane Cheva Godavari Saraswati Namade Sindhu Kaveri Jale Asmin Sannidhi Kuru. So it's like all the main rivers of the country, we are invoking that in the bath waters, and then we are taking a bath using that. So there again, it's a commitment to rivers and water and commitment to that. So I think that's really a close link that we have as an individual towards the climate.
Only to be colloquially correct, by bath you mean a shower.
Shower, yeah.
Yes, because a bath would mean we are using quite a lot of water and we are wasting a lot of water.
Yeah.
It's a shower that we're taking and not the bath.
Bath, yeah.
Yes, so it's a shower that we're talking about. And it's minimalistic as opposed to trying to spend hours and hours under the
So the bath in the Indian equivalent is a bucket of water.
Absolutely.
And not like the
tub.
Bath.
Yes.
And what's your individual reflections from a climate standpoint?
So my own personal habits, I'm not a very consumerist person. I don't consume quite a lot, and I don't go and buy lots of clothes and things just for the fancy of wearing it once or twice.
Not going fast fashion.
I recycle the clothes quite a bit, and I think the shirts I'm wearing is something that I have for many years now. I'm glad that I'm still fitting in them. That's a different story. But yeah, it's from not finding need to go and buy lots of things, and whenever possible, I try to cycle from point A to point B at the most that I can manage, or walk, rather than instinctively jump in the car and go and do that. And if there is a possibility, then I go and take public transport. So all that is what I do at personal level, which has nothing to do with Hinduism. It has to do with the way we are living. But again, when I'm bringing in the Hindu practice. I volunteer as a priest. I do offer prayers at the temple. I go to people's homes and offer prayers. And when people ask me for materials, I try to source materials which are very easily available locally. I don't, even though I have an option of asking for materials which have to be sourced from further afield, out with Scotland, or in fact out with the country. I try my best to avoid asking for those materials, and I say the most common expression that I use is, don't worry too much about the materials. Most of the materials that I ask for, you will get them in your corner store or in your supermarket. And if I'm not asking for those materials, then I question myself, do I really need? And that's one of the things that I do when I'm practicing the rituals. I'm conducting puja in the temple. I don't like the material to travel from a very far distance to come. And the second is, I try to reduce the amount of material that I use and see if there is anything that we can recycle. And recycle and reuse. Reuse, I think, is the first thing, and then maybe a recycle as well. So these are the two things that I always watch out for whenever I'm conducting
Puja at the temple.
Puja at the temple or out in the community at anyone's place. Because I think the more locally we source, we are reducing the carbon footage, and that is a good thing.
Absolutely. And again, from a temple standpoint, the fact that we are using, yes, locally made resources, but the fact that we are using natural resources in the puja ritual itself, which is your flowers, or when it comes to even leaves that we are using in the puja, it's again a commitment to the environment, because unless you have them, you cannot offer devotion to the god. I mean, so incorporating that within the ritual is a way of commitment to the climate through that. And if you look at the symbolisms of the gods, there again there is a commitment to the nature and the environment, because let's say if you're looking at Ganesha, the Vahana or the vehicle of Ganesha is a rat, animal. If you look at Subramanya, the vehicle is a peacock. If it's a Shiva, it's a bull. So the fact that you have these symbolisms in the idols that we are invoking and worshipping is in a way a reflection of the fact that it's important that we can serve and protect all of them.
Coexist.
Coexist. While we do all of our rituals. So that's again a recommitment or reassuring of commitment to the climate and the environment.
Indeed, yes. So you talked about working with the nature, and when we talk about working with the nature, there's two very, very powerful words of wisdom that we have. Well, one of that is from Atharva Veda, I think. It goes by the saying, Mata Prithvihi Putro Aham Prithvyaha. The earth is our mother, and we are all her children. It's absolutely, you can't go wrong. It's such an important thing, and it hits you immediately as soon as you hear something like that. It hits you immediately. And when we talk about Rudram, we talk about centuries and centuries and centuries ago, as a hymn that was composed centuries and centuries ago. And if you dissect Rudram and trying to understand Rudram, what does it say? It says we as humankind have always understood the good and the suffering that the climate change can bring. If we look at the verses from Rudram, that is what it tells us. And we are offering prayers saying, please give us environment, please give us the climate that is there to protect us, and please spare us from the calamity that the environment can unleash on us. So we knew those many centuries ago that if the climate is upset with you, it can get you into trouble, or it can get me into trouble. So we knew it at those many years ago, and yet still we are here trying to not do much about it and ignore it. And the purpose of what we did earlier in the week was essentially to press ahead the message to the individual, to the group, and to the community and to the governments that we are now in a climate emergency. And if we don't treat this as an emergency now, then it could be too late before we can do anything about it.
So I hope that action happens as a post hoc function of the commitments being reassured.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Namaskara.
Namaskara. Thank you.